Frontier opening bell for this Wednesday, the 6th of March, looks like this. Of course, as always, just a bit of a look back into the second trading day of the week, which is Tuesday. The Nigerian stock market is still sniffing around the 100,000 all-share index reading. Still not yet there in terms of the latest listing that we saw this week. The Transco Power that lifted the markets, rallying the banking sector, the industrial goods as well, which includes Transcorp Group and a few other names as well. But again, we've seen this massive and steady sell-off in the shares of MTN. As a company, Telco reports about 700 billion naira FX loss in Nigeria. That was the biggest for the Nigerian economy and for a listed company so far. We've seen hundreds of billions of others of naira being reported in decline in FX losses by other big names such as Nestle in the consumer goods space and Nigerian breweries, the largest brewer by market cap. So the naira is still very much under pressure, and the whole of 2023 was a watershed in Nigeria's economic and market history. So that's where we are today. Transcorp Power gains another 10% on Tuesday, and Transcorp Group also gained as well, including a few other names around that. The BRVM yesterday finished off 0.35% in the red. That was dragged in the main by a few names, including the Ranch Telecom, despite advances that we saw in the shares of Bank of Africa Mali, Bank of Africa Nigeria Republic, as well as Bank of Africa Burkina Faso. In Egypt, the stock market up 0.41% as we got the announcement just early today that the Egypt Central Bank called an emergency or unscheduled monetary policy meeting and raised the country's interest rate by a massive 600 basis points to the upside in a bid to stave off the devaluation of the Egyptian pound that is expected to happen anytime soon. That's the big news this morning out of the biggest economy north of the continent. So the stock market's been rallying very strongly, above 5% on Monday, took another 0.141% on Tuesday. Let's see how the stock market will react today to this jumbo hike in policy rate for President Al-Sisi's economy. The Nairobi stock market fell up just about 0.1% yesterday. We saw about 12.9 million ordinary shares of stocks traded on the Nairobi market. And of course, the GSE also down by 0.54%, led by the shares of MTN Group. That's the parent company of the all MTN shares listed across a few jurisdictions in Africa, which includes Nigeria, Ghana, and a few others as well. So let's get to the headlines, as it were, checking into the East African markets. The whole tax issues in Kenya is still one very big news as everyone's grappling around what the administration is trying to do to balance its fiscal space. The FX reserves for East Africa's biggest economy dipped below $7 billion as the central bank continued to defend the shillings against the onslaught of the US dollar. The Treasury, however, is expecting debt for Kenya to cross 13 trillion shillings by the year 2027. Still within that corridor, Somalia has joined the East African community as the 8th partner state, and all eyes now set on Addis Ababa to ratify its membership of the EAC. And the DR Congo is looking to establish about to unlock about 5 billion barrels of oil within the country as it ramped up very strongly on hydrocarbon production. Finally, in East Africa, Tanzania is looking to import 30,000 tons of non-basmati white rice from India. India has placed a ban on rice exports, but gave this a concession to Tanzania to support the country's food security in East Africa. Thank you very much. But let's move on and check with West Africa, with Nigerian authorities still grappling with the state of the economy, fuel, electricity subsidies, the policy monetary tightening. The IMF says that was good, but subsidies could should cost Nigeria's GDP about 3%. That's roughly 7 trillion. If the government continues to hold on to those subsidies, the IMF wants Nigeria to throw the entire subsidies for fuel, electricity completely out of the window and just move on. The Binance is in a loggerheads with the Nigerian authorities and served notice to Nigerian customers that is stopping operations within the country. There will be no more Naira services in the country, and it's closing shop. One or two officials of Binance in Nigeria Exchange, that crypto platform, are with the Department of State Securities. Yesterday, we got news, Ellie, that the Bank of Ghana, the central bank, has suspended the FX licenses of GT Bank of Ghana as well as First Bank of Ghana due to malpractices and certain misbehavior as far as the FX market is concerned. That ban for 30 days will be effective 18th of March until the 17th of April. And that's just the announcement. Cote d'Ivoire got its Eurobond rally yesterday as Moody's Investor Services upgrade the country's sovereign credit rating to Ba2. That's good news. Remember, Cote d'Ivoire went to the global Eurobond markets this year in January to raise the curtain for sub-Saharan Africa in Eurobond, raising about $5 billion bearing the market. And that was followed by Benin Republic doing about $750 billion with order book north of $5 billion as well for that small French-speaking West African economy next to Nigeria's in West Africa. Then you've got Togo getting about $390 million support from the IMF as well to stabilize the economy. That's next door also to Benin Republic. The global financial architecture needs to be refixed and made fit and proper for every country or region in the world. And that's according to Clever Gatete, who is the Executive Secretary of the United Nations Economic Commission for Africa. And he was speaking at the UNECAS conference for Africa's finance and economic ministers being hosted by Zimbabwean authorities in Harare. Let's start checking with Southern Africa. I'll just got a couple of earnings news. MTN shares yesterday was dragged on the market as news coming out of Nigeria not so pleasant about the FX losses amounting to about 700 billion in local currency. In the meantime, the good news for the Ramaphosa's administration, well, some sort of good news was that the GDP dodged the recession bullet by 0.6% for the full year. Quarter on quarter, fourth quarter came in 0.2%, better than the dip that was seen in the third quarter. The figure for last year, 0.6%, was just about half of what was the GDP growth for 2022. But it's still a tough time for the Ramaphosa's administration, despite trying to reduce the rolling blackouts in the country, and the mining sector coming strongly to support the economy. We got business activity data out of Africa's most advanced economy yesterday, reading 50.8 reading in February, and that's a expansionary mode than 49.2 reading in the month of January. Mozambique business activity also climbed to an expansionary slightly 50.7 in the month of February, coming out of a contraction of about 47.8 in the previous month. In corporate news, ShopRite reporting strong second half 2023 numbers. July to December, sales was up 13.9% to 121 billion rand. That came yesterday from one of the largest chain stores in South Africa with operations in a few African countries. Then you have Canal Plus sweetening its deal to take over MultiChoice all cash $2.9 billion. And that's the latest on that deal. So let's finish off in North Africa with Egypt. Of course, today, holding an unscheduled monetary policy meeting, raising interest rate by 600 basis points to support the administration and to moderate the devaluation of the Egyptian pound that is expected to occur as part of the deals with the IMF that President Al-Sisi and his team in Cairo are working on. The country's PMI, however, slows to 47.1 in February, and that's no good news. That's a contractionary, in fact, a further contraction from 48.1 that we saw in January. Telecom Egypt, that's in corporate news, posted $1.83 billion in total revenue for its full year 2023. That's good news for the EGX. Morocco reporting phosphate exports 17%, north of $615 million in the month of January. Morocco is one of the largest phosphate exporter on the African continent. Tunisia in the region says it's about $150 million coming from the EU as a loan to support the country's financial system stability. That's something President Said's administration can use. And Italian, Libyan Commerce, Chamber of Commerce, have signed what you call a unification deal across the Mediterranean. And those are some of your headlines as we speak. We've got a whole lot more for you as we see earnings season coming through from a number of African markets, in particular the Kenyan exchange, with the banks leading that season as we speak and step into the month of March. Have a great day, everyone. I'll see you back on the show tomorrow, Thursday.